W back if you're just joining us. This is Firecrackers, and we're about to talk about terrorism financing. That is the one that US aid was indicted. The roles of NGOs in this particular problem that we have at hand, that the National Assembly, both the Senate and the House of Reps, they seem to be very much putting their work in order to come to the solution to this, to find out a lot about this. So like I said, I have our guest here in the studio, Dr. Adetokunbo Pierce. Thank you so much for being here with us. Okay, and we also have Yinka Ogunsoya, who is joining us live from USA, security expert. Thank you for joining us at this time. We truly appreciate your presence.
Thank you.
And we also have Emmanuel Ikole, the Executive Director, Elixir Trust Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, all right. So I'll be starting with my guest here in the studio. A lot of things have been happening recently, but especially when it comes to our relations with the United States of America, they're stopping funding for a lot of developing countries, which a lot of people did not like. But when we have one of their speakers coming and say that the US aid themselves might be sponsoring Boko Haram and other terrorist groups in Africa, how do you react to that? Is there even possibility that that is possible?
Let me try to explain what I know about the way the system works. USAID indeed funds organizations. In the case of Nigeria, what happened? Let's take 2015 as an example. When the Chibok girls were abducted, about 300 girls. USAID, federal government of Nigeria, had informed the then governor of Borno State, who is now vice presidential, that Boko Haram was operating in the area. It might be dangerous to hold the examination. But they ignored the information, went ahead and had the exam. The kids were abducted, and now they started blaming Jonathan that it was his fault that the kids were abducted. At that point in time, Boko Haram was on the rampage. It had captured many villages. It was in many places in the north. Consider what happened before that 2015 election. These leaders in the north were using Boko Haram to harass Jonathan. They were the ones, look, one, Muhammadu Buhari was alleged to be a supporter of Boko Haram because at one point in time, Boko Haram suggested that in the discussions between Nigerian government and Boko Haram that Muhammadu Buhari should represent them. What does that tell you? Secondly, Muhammadu Buhari himself said in the run-up to that election that a war against Boko Haram is war against the North. What does that tell you? There's another allegation coming out recently that the chairman of Boko Haram, the leader of Boko Haram, was governor of Kaduna, El-Rufai. There is no smoke without fire. And I think what happened was USAID would fund something like rural electrification in the north, let's say. They will fund rehabilitation of refugees and so on. Now, when they put in the money for these things, housing, schools, all sorts of things USAID does, the point is what happens to the money. How does it get into the hands of Boko Haram? It gets into the hands of Boko Haram because of these corrupt, these fraudulent leaders, such as the ones I've mentioned who have been attached to Boko Haram. They now use organizations like Boko Haram for their own political interests. That is what happened in Nigeria with USAID. Forget about the congressman who said reform. It's just a statement. The details is what I'm telling you now. Yes, indeed, USAID funding gets into the hands of Boko Haram and terrorist groups. Sometimes America itself uses the terrorist groups against their opponents. If they're fighting Russia, for instance, and there's a terrorist group that they can work with to fight the terrorist group or to fight Russia, they will use that. That's always been the case of colonialists and so on. So it's a question of power. In the case of Nigeria, what has happened? I don't know why Fabio, what's his name, Senate President, all of them are shouting. They know what happened. They know what happened in 2015. Jonathan has said it many times that Barack Obama government used all these allegations against him to get rid of him. So it is all a political manipulation. What happened was Barack Obama's government was not happy with Jonathan because Jonathan was leaning more and more toward doing business with China. They wanted him out. Jonathan government also refused to sanction the idea of same-sex marriage. They wanted him out. So when the Boko Haram issue, when the Chibok girls issue arrived, what happened was Shetima and co seized the opportunity that America was not happy with Jonathan. They wanted Jonathan out. So they colluded with Boko Haram to terrorize the whole place and make Nigeria ungovernable for Jonathan so that he will lose the election. That's the politics behind this USAID. Don't blame America, blame our own local corrupt politicians, and they are still in government now.
Okay, so you want us to look at it from the angle of do not blame the tempter, blame the temptee, so to speak.
No, the point is that USAID, it is not only in Nigeria that this happens. Many places that they send funds to for development. You see, there are two aspects to the way USAID works. Of course, USAID, no government, especially European governments from fellow countries, they don't do anything that is not in their own interest. So if they are sending money to a certain place, they're sending funds to a certain region, they're expecting some results. They want that region. For instance, I believe that there is some truth in the allegation that some funds were sent to the north to slow down the birth rate. I believe it because America doesn't want an explosion of population in Africa because it will become manageable, whatever, for the political reasons.
The one of the meningitis vaccine that was
that vaccine and other ways that they try to control population. That is an aspect of USAID that is in the interest of the Americans. Now, there's another aspect, which one, the one that concerns me most, especially now we are talking about funding Boko Haram as if America, what would be their reason? They're either funding Boko Haram because they want chaos in the area to kill off people. It's difficult for me to believe the American government wants to kill off our population to keep the population down. There is that allegation, there is that theory. I don't subscribe to that theory. The one that I subscribe to, it happens all over the world. Boko Haram sends, USAID sends funding to Afghanistan for development of education. What does the Afghan government do? They seize the money. They develop male education. They don't allow girls to go to school. Now you say USAID is funding Taliban and terrorists. No. You see, so this is what happens. The local powers that be, they seize the money. It happened in the Sudan. 200 schools, I believe, they were supposed to have built. At the end of the exercise, they look, no, not one single building. Not one. Where is the money? It's between, of course, USAID personnel, they are not perfect, they are human beings, but it is the interest of the local people to make sure that the money that was sent for local development is used in the interest of the people, not in the interest of the politicians, who want to use it either for themselves, to enrich themselves, or to empower themselves by using it to get rid of their opponents in politics.
Okay, all right. So now let us have the opinion of Yinka Ogunsoya, who I would say has much experience when it comes to issues of conflict resolution, especially in other countries around the world. So let us look at these allegations, a very big one that we have with us at this point. What are the possibilities that foreign aid, especially from organizations as big as USAID, they might be funding terrorism in other countries around the world? What's the probability of that happening?
Good afternoon once again. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So, to blatantly say USAID is funding terrorism without having proper investigation and direct links will be committing some kind of hearsay or trying to just rush to conclusion on the issue. I've been dealing with this Boko Haram issue prior to 2015 and speaking on it and trying to make sense out of it. When it comes to terrorism and non-directional warfare or guerrilla warfare, the things that's been going on has always been funding from external forces. I think was the last two segment I spoke about that why are we not tracing the money? Why are we not following the money? The money is where the power is. Where is the money coming from? Like the speaker said earlier, USAID is going to fund developmental projects around the world because of one thing: American interest, stabilization of regional issues to prevent terrorism bridging abroad and spilling over into their homeland. They do that. The problem here is the leadership around the world that accept this money and expect that everything is going to be fine without thinking, what does these people want for giving us this much money? And also the leaders, our leaders, their sincerity in using the money for the purpose is intended for. Because if you're a bad negotiator, you're going to go out there and accept money and put the life and risk your people. I truly believe in that. What is going on in Northeast Nigeria is exactly something that the speaker spoke about going on in Afghanistan. I was there. I was on the ground, running around Afghanistan. I saw it with my own eyes and I felt it. This money is not being used for what it's intended to be used for, and it's getting in the wrong hand. How do we prevent that? That should be our focus right now. Instead of trying to point fingers at different actors at different particular time and pitching groups against each other. This is a part of our history that Nigeria has to actually come together and move forward with one voice. If we cannot do that, and we continue to dance to the tune of the colonial masters of divide and rule tactics, then we're going to get the same result. You know, it's like you're doing the same thing over and over and you're expecting a different result. It's not going to happen. We have to take control of what we believe is ours, our future plan, and come together as one and be able to move forward. This northern, southern, eastern thing is going to continue to eat our fabric without having a conference to resolve and heal the wound of the past. It might not be the main topic we're speaking right now, but it's going to be a byproduct of how people do things. Voting, everybody votes mostly along ethnic and tribal lines, unless somebody wants to, and everybody protect those interests based on the tribe and ethnic groups. So one thing that if a southern president is doing something, somebody in the east or northern part will see that's against them. If we don't come with a uniform voice, we will continue to have this. Somebody is going to collect money from external factors and allow them to do whatever they want. So let me quickly go back to the a case study in Congo. I don't think there's any time in Congo's area where there's been peace. I attach this to mineral resources, valuable mineral resources. If you look at Boko Haram emergence, you know, there's been some Maitastini back in the days, in the early 80s, that was developing, but it wasn't as strong. But if you look at the onset of discovery of large volume of gold in Zamfara area and the emergence of Boko Haram, you can kind of put a parallel to it, which is similar to what's going on in Congo. Whenever there's this huge volume of natural resources that can be carted away, somebody within those local countries are bribed. They cause disaffection among the people, infighting, tribal war, so that they can house planes living that area, catching gold. I mean, it's not a rumor anymore. Same thing happened in Niger, coming in to pick up uranium. So either the US, Russia, Britain, whatever Western power or Eastern power you want to talk about, they do not have Nigerian interests at heart. That's what our leaders need to understand. They give you the bait so they can get what they need to get and destabilize your region in doing so, which is a way of conducting business.
Thank you for that. So when it comes to funding for Boko Haram, would you say that perhaps a large chunk of it might be coming from foreign aid, or we have people who have actually pointed out that some of our leaders in Nigeria might be the one that is funding? Which do you think is much more plausible at this point in time, since these have been going on for well over a decade?
I honestly think the bulk of the money is coming from external sources, but it's going through the hands of local leaders that's distributing it. You know, these guys don't know the main actors in Boko Haram. They cannot be community organizer for Boko Haram. They need somebody that has some influence in the area that they felt they can trust. You know, that has an account or hidden in a foreign country. Most of the operators of Boko Haram has never had any foreign account anywhere. The guys we're talking about here are local leaders that have well-traveled, are very sophisticated, can move money from one country to the other, you know, using their cell phone. So those are the people that interface between Boko Haram and these funders. And the funding, I don't think it's just USAID. I think it's a misuse of money. There's a lot of money probably coming from the rivalry between the Shiites, Islamic version, and then the Sunnis. The same thing is going on in the Middle East right now. Iran is funding all these Hezbollah and every Houthis all over the place to fight Israel. Same thing is happening. Some of the money is filtering into our environment and it's destabilizing our country, and they're taking away our natural resources at no cost. I would say the only cost they have is transportation, because they're not paying anything to the federal government as of now for taking those gold and other resources in those areas.
Who is the Executive Director, Elixir Trust Foundation. With this allegation going on now, it has made, let me use the National Assembly now for instance, they want to be putting more attention to the NGOs, that's the non-governmental organizations, and where they are receiving funding from. Do you think that at this point in time, this is the right thing to do, or perhaps they should be looking, well, of course, we know that every money coming into the country now has to be investigated. But let us look at NGOs now and the role that they have to play in perhaps helping to sponsor or helping to fund terrorism, and that is with receiving this large chunk of money, and then instead of it going for development, then it is going for the, well, still development, but for the terrorists now, not for the benefit of humanity.
So the essence of foreign aid to every country actually is to support interventions in country, is to aid in technical expertise supporting interventions. At the same time, is to ensure that each country, or at least those implementing the project, try to work on international best practices. For a country like ours, we already have an idea on the works of EFCC. We already have an idea of the works of central banks. So for us working in the sector and working in the NGO sector, once any money enters your account, as a lot of years back, it's not just something of recent, it's already been in place, more like a checks on even operationalization of NGOs generally. If any money hits your account immediately, your account is being blocked. You need to go to the bank with certain information for such an account to be operationalized. This is something that has been happening over the years. So direct funding to NGOs, at least local NGOs to an extent. There are checks and balances to the point at which the NGOs themselves now are having self-regulation, to the point that some of these issues don't even occur, or even the names and images of NGOs working in Nigeria are not even affected. But that is not to say that it's not possible that international NGOs may also be supporting interventions like this. Like the last two persons said, if you check most of the interventions of UN, or should I put it, US aid, most of these funds go to certain governments. It does not, most times, they don't really come directly to NGOs. If it comes, maybe there are very few, and it may also be international NGOs. So these interventions come through them, and not necessarily us. And when it goes to the level of the government, just like the last speaker said, there have been no accountability for those in public offices. And most times, chunk or huge amounts of money goes to an account that is already recipient of similar amounts. So state governments have been receiving several amounts in billions. And most times, if you also look at the state budgetary allocations of some states, you see that the international body is supporting the budgetary implementation for, or supporting with funds to ensure that their budget or their project for that particular year it's been implemented. But the big question has always been the absence of accountability in any sector in Nigeria. Maybe, let me say to an extent, only the NGO sector, to some extent, it's been audited. So these funds come in and go out. At the level of NGOs, they may be reporting, they may be audit, there may be financial payments at different times, be it to the FIRS, be it to TSC filings and all that, to ensure that accountability on funds received. But to the government, and just like the first person also said, these funds come, even when certain persons are being fingered to be responsible for these evils in our society, we still promote them. Same persons will still go further to become leaders, no checks. And if you look at also interventions in some places where people have been displaced, most times this displacement happen because of resources, just like also the last person said. And whenever you also try to call on the attention of the federal government to come and ensure intervention in some areas and ensure return, particularly, let me say Benue, Zamfara that was mentioned, and Niger, that some resources or thereabout are being found at those places, you don't see government intervention. They will delay, and these persons will end up being consistently in camps. And consistently, the federal government will continue to ask for more funds to come for intervention, security. These security funds that are being going to state governors, how many of them accounts for it? So as much as there are certain persons benefiting from these security funds being given to governors and over again, there will always be insecurity. So whether there's sponsorship from outside or not, there's also politics involved in almost every decision being made in the country. And to a large extent, the federal government has to come out and clear its name. The state government has to do the same. And for us, just like I said earlier, there are already evidence of how we receive, and who we are receiving such monies and how we are spending it. If you don't even have that clear explanation, you won't even have access to that money for us at the NGO level. So I believe there's need for accountability across all sectors. And if people fail to account for monies in their possession or how it's being used, such persons should be held to account, which is something that has been lacking for a lot of years now in the country. But if that is being done, some of these cases will already defend itself, and such persons already be in correctional centers already before even such allegations will come up in the first place.
Okay, all right. So with this situation that we have at hand now, it seems that if the federal government really wanted to do something about targeting the sources of funding for insurgency in Nigeria, they would have been able to do it. So would you also agree that the reason we still have terrorism still on the rise in Nigeria, would you say it is also because of lack of political will to deal decisively with them?
Okay, since over we don't time, have... Okay, yeah, please go on. Over time, there have been
Yeah, please go.
consistent funds being sent for several interventions within the country. And if all this while, some monies that are coming to the NGO sectors, they have been audited. And then the funds coming to the federal government, there have been no audit on any sector. Every government works for 4 years, works for 8 years, and then moves to the next position. Nobody's been audited. Same persons via for several positions. And those monies that pass through their hands are not accounted for. No country can develop like this. And let me also put it here before I even forget. No African country has developed or would develop from foreign assistance. We have to find a way to fix us. We need to work on our international relations policy, how it works for our own good. This is something that we have been failing in the past, and the greediness of our leaders have also not helped. But we need to find a way to fix this. National Assembly and National Assembly, be the House of Senate, House of Rep, they also need to wake up to their functions of oversight on the executive. If they can do this to an extent, it reduces it. But most time we look at them as partners in this evil that is troubling our country, and that is why we are also being limited. So, but we are hoping that if accountability can be a watchword, some of this crisis situation can still be addressed.
Prevalence of insecurity, banditry, terrorism in Nigeria, do you think that if up to now we are still dealing with this, do you also think that it might be an issue of lack of political will from the government? Because sadly, our soldiers are dying every day. They're trying to make sense of this situation, trying to bring peace to Nigeria. So what are your thoughts on it? Is our government actually doing enough when it comes to dealing with this decisively?
Let me thank you for the question, and this has been an area that I've touched extensively over the years. I had an interview that was I think it was in this day, and the title was "Until There's a Political Will and a Total Stand Against Terrorism, We're Not going to move forward." As long as we have political disagreements and backings for this kind of shenanigans, then the external factors is going to see the crack and be able to use it to get what they want to do within our country. For me, I think loving Nigeria and accepting that we are one country is the first thing. Our people, whether the leaders or the regular people in the country, needs to agree on. We need to work on our leadership as well. It seems our leadership is sectored or cut off for the rich and powerful. For example, if you want to become a governor in Nigeria, just to obtain the form is hundreds of millions at the party level. How many people can afford that? That means about 90% of the Nigerian population, smart, articulate people, well-educated people, are cut off from governance. In Texas, I can just go and pay $2,500, get some signatures, and I'll be an independent candidate on the ballot. That's the way it works in most places. As long as we continue to recycle people that have interest in making money off the government. I can't remember the leader that said it a while back that if you're going to government to make money, you're going in there for the wrong reason. The purpose of going into government is to help alleviate poverty and develop your land, and it's not to enrich yourself. It's a selfless service. So for us to curtail these, yes, there must be a total united political and leadership will to stamp out insurgency out of Nigeria. If we don't take time and fix it now, there's going to be proliferations of groups because other groups are watching and they will start agitating and we'll have more troubles on our hand, not just in the northeast. It will be small pockets of insurgents everywhere. That's what we don't want to have. That's what's going on in the Middle East. Everybody knows about Taliban because they're the main group. There's so many other groups running around Afghanistan and claim to be the governing this part of the country. We don't want that in our country. So it's time to pull all our resources together, our leadership mind together, and also allow, the regular people to come into governance and have a united front to be able to fix these issues.
All right, thank you so much for that. And now to Dr. Adetokunbo, what are your thoughts on the government's effort towards stamping out terrorism in Nigeria? Let's use that to wrap up the segment before we go to other segments.
Your two guests have been fantastic. They have said a lot and exposed a lot. The bottom line is that the government is fraudulent and corrupt. I'll give you an example. In 2023, a member of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, Hajia, I can't remember her full name, made the allegation that our Vice President Shatima is an ally of Boko Haram. And she made reference to an event that happened, that when they were looking for a notorious leader of Boko Haram, I think his name is Kabiru Sokoto, they found him in the home of Shatima, the same vice president. A few months ago, before the 2023 election, she also alleged that a drug baron, was terrorist known, is a friend of Shatima's. So the point is that the way this works, you can see that the NGOs have nothing to do with this. The NGOs are policed by federal government. You cannot even register if you are not clean, if you are not accountable. When it comes to keeping everybody under check and making them accountable, the government knows how to do that. The problem is the government doesn't keep itself accountable and is not responsible for taking care of the people. That is the bottom line. When the money comes from this international, as I said before, as one of the guests said, the governments have their own interests. Of course, they have their reason for funding one group or the other. The point now is, what does the government of that country do? I've always said that the reason Boko Haram has been able to function and survive for so long is because it has access to rich minerals, uranium, in the Borno-Bauchi area. This is rich in uranium, and it is that uranium that they've been selling to foreign countries. The point is, who should check the sale of our natural resources to foreigners? Don't blame the Chinese or the Americans or the French who come to grab our gold, our bauxite, our phosphate, our uranium, our lithium, if they can get away with it. It is a role of the government to keep these things in check so that you must starve. It is the federal government that must starve terrorist groups from getting funding, from keeping alive, but they're not doing it. Rather, they are colluding, as in the case of the vice president. It is on record. So many, now El-Rufai is trying to get himself out of trouble. He's not going to get out of trouble because the hands are too dirty. They have done too many criminal things with criminal groups. Now, if you are going to use these criminal elements to fight your fight for your political gain, you can't keep them in control. Sometimes they support these groups to come out, they let them have small ammunitions, guns, and so on. After the election, they have won the election. That's what happened in Boko Haram. Boko Haram came in because in 2015 election, they used the leaders in the north used Boko Haram to terrorize the presidency. The presidency now lost. They now became president. Buhari became president. Don't forget what happened. Immediately Buhari became president. The Boko Haram, they were insisting that we had a deal. You must give us this state. You wanted to give us this state. They nearly assassinated Buhari because they say he didn't keep his word. This is the problem with Nigeria. So USAID is not perfect. Americans have their own interests, but our concern should be how we protect our own interests and keep our country together in a way. Don't turn everything into petty politics just to win an election. You terrorize the whole country, you destroy everybody. What is it? This APC government came in as a terrorist group. I am saying it. What happened? Did they not say that they will not, that Nigeria will burn if they don't win election? They will set up a parallel government. Rotimi Amechi, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, El Rufai, Shetima. These are the people who said, if we don't win this election, we will set up a parallel government. This is criminal. And they use terrorist groups. They take the funding from terrorist groups. They don't have to fund the terrorist groups. The terrorist groups are funded by all sorts of foreign interests, and they work with for the terrorist groups. They're talking about 16 billion raised at one event. They're using, government is using 21 billion to renovate Vice President Lodge. There's a lot of money in government. So they work with terrorist groups. Why do you think Boko Haram has survived all this time? Where is the government of the state? How can Sokoto state say that terrorists are demanding tax from their citizens? What are you doing about it? The government has failed the people. That is where our problem is, and not what USAID has done.
All right, thank you so much.